Hello and welcome to the Royal Central podcast from royalcentral.co.uk. I'm Lydia Starbuck, the Associate Editor.
I'm Brittani Barger, the Deputy Editor.
And I'm Jess Isles, the Senior Royal Reporter and Editorial Assistant.
And it's very nice to be back with you. This is our first podcast for a little while, but we're hoping to make a habit of it again as we move into the autumn and as we move into more normal times for royalty. It's been a strange time for all of us, for royal families included. Things have been a bit quiet, but they seem to be getting a bit busier now. So we're going to be reflecting on that in our latest podcast. A little bit later on, we'll be having a chat about some surprising news from the Netherlands this week, where the Prime Minister has got involved in a debate that was generated by a book that questioned whether a future monarch could still take the throne if they married someone of the same sex. And we're also going to be having a look at the story of Princess Charlene, which has been a big talking point for Europe's royals over the last few months. But we're going to start a bit closer to home, for me anyway, here in the UK. In a few weeks' time, the UK plays host to COP26, the environmental summit. There'll be a big focus on all things environmental. But in the run up to that, we've had some members of the British royal family making what might be described as some rather controversial comments. And it's led to that favourite debate of whether royalty should get involved in politics. So that's where we're starting this week. The Queen, the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Cambridge have all had their say on environmental matters this week. And perhaps most interesting was the Queen being accidentally caught on microphone saying politicians talk but don't do anything.
Mm-hmm. I didn't really think that Prince Charles or Prince William saying anything was all that surprising. They're not the monarch, but the Queen getting caught, and I mean the cameras were there, so she knew that she was being filmed, so she knew what she was doing. And it's kind of funny that she was talking about the people that weren't coming to COP26, as you were saying, and one of them was the Australian Prime Minister. And the following day, all of a sudden, he's suddenly coming. So it seems like she may have done a little bit of good.
Don't doubt her powers.
Exactly.
Yeah, that famous soft diplomacy. So yeah, she was caught saying it was irritating that they knew some people were coming but some people weren't, and it kind of tied in with the comment that Charles had made a few days earlier in an interview with the BBC, where he said politicians, yeah, they talk but they don't do anything. There seems to be this sudden focus on people talking but not following it up with actions, which kind of veered into political waters, really.
It did. But I mean, at the same time, we have been in this like stalemate, at least here in the United States, for so long, of people just talking. They're doing nothing. They're arguing back and forth. We're getting nowhere. And I'm not sure how it is there in the UK or in Canada, but maybe they think if they finally say something, things may change.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oftentimes it's like you need a kick in the pants to get anything done. I mean, here in Canada, we've had the like residential schools and all of the Indigenous children and the graves that we've been finding, and like we've known about this for decades and centuries, but it really only came to a head this summer, where we enacted these laws and these holidays to recognize them. So it took a push to get the government to act on that, and I think that's what we're seeing Charles and the Queen and William doing by calling out the politicians and calling out the billionaires who are going to space to visit, because it's important to act on this stuff, like William was saying, and sometimes you just need that motivator to actually sit down and do it. It's not enough to just be like, oh yes, we'll do it. Okay, well, show me that you're going to do it. And if I have to call you out and risk being caught on a hot mic, then I'll do it, right?
Everything is so divided right now that maybe they think that by their words, because they are so influential, that maybe they can be a unifying force, even if the words are deemed a little controversial because they're going into the political realm. Mm-hmm. Like I said, at least here in the US, I'm sure it's the same all across the globe. Everyone is so divided over everything. The pandemic has not helped matters. So maybe this is just their way of trying to get people like, wake up. Can we just unify, get things done.
Yeah, because there is an argument as well, isn't there, that the environment isn't really a political issue anymore. When the Duke of Edinburgh first started talking about it, right at the beginning of the Queen's reign, almost 70 years ago, it was because his views, his opinions, a lot of people share them now, but at the time they were seen as controversial, maybe a little bit cranky, unproven. And there is that argument that actually, if you talk about climate change, if you talk about protecting the planet, if you talk about doing things to ensure that we're not polluting the seas or the air or the earth around us, that's not a political statement, it's a social statement. And you would expect the royal family, or any royal family, to make a social statement. It's the politics that they often stay away from.
For sure. And I think we see the same thing with Prince Charles, where 30, 40 years ago, people dismissed him as a little kooky for talking about green and running his cars on wine and cheese and stuff like that. But now he's considered an expert in the field, and he's sort of the elder statesman of green policies, where now all of a sudden we're listening to him and taking what he says into account with more gravitas and more weight than we probably would have even 15 years ago.
And I suppose the royals can say, you know, we're walking the walk as well as talking the talk. Because as you mentioned, Charles has been outlining again that this car that runs on cheese and wine, which sounds like a good day out to me, but also all the biomass fueled boilers and all of the stuff that he's been doing at his homes. But then we've also got happening right now Prince William's Earthshot Prize, which has been a major project through 2021, even in kind of lockdowns and when life was on hold. And it's all coming to fruition now. We're about to find out the 5 projects that are getting £1 million to help tackle environmental issues. So there is action there, isn't there? It's, if you're going to make a controversial statement and say, right, do things, don't just talk about it, they are doing things.
For sure. And I think a good example of that is how he called out Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon, for going into space, just to say that he can go into space and throw his money around. And as of today, his Earth Fund, or whatever it's called, is a global alliance partner with the Earthshot Prize. That wasn't the case like a week ago. So William making that statement led to action, and now we have Jeff Bezos and his money. However, it's probably pennies to him and his overall wealth, but he is helping out now because William called him out so publicly, and those comments went so widespread.
Yeah, I mean, they were even covered here in the United States, you know, and William and Kate and the Queen and stuff are covered here, but just small comments they make are not always caught. But that made the news. Yeah,
even William Shatner got involved, didn't he? Prince William was taken on by William Shatner because he'd just been into space.
Yes, 90 years old.
Flying around the earth, as you do at the age of 90. But it will be interesting to see how it plays out, because the Queen and Charles and Camilla and William and Kate and other royals are going to be up at COP26 in Glasgow, which starts very, very soon, where we've got so many world leaders converging in Scotland to talk about the environment. So it kind of makes that slightly more interesting, doesn't it? You know, we expected the royals to go along because this is a big event for the UK, and of course they're there and they're going to be welcoming people. But now we've had these 3 sets of comments in such a short period of time. It's really focused attention, hasn't it? Everyone's kind of like waiting for someone to heckle from the front row as the speeches start.
I mean, I personally didn't know who was attending COP26, and I have to admit that I didn't really care. I just figured it would be the usual heads of state. But ever since the Queen called them out, now I'm just constantly checking Twitter, like, who else is going? Who else is going? Who's she going to call out next if she doesn't like what she sees on the guest list?
Yeah, the power of the Queen.
Yeah, it could be really, really interesting. So it all kicks off in just a few weeks' time, and the main talks are around at the beginning of November. We'll cover them all on royalcentral.co.uk, and of course any and all controversial comments which we hear between then and now, they'll all be on the site as well. But one story that has brought a lot of attention over the summer, we featured it a lot on the site, and it's got a lot of hits, a lot of interest, is the ongoing story of Princess Charlene, who's been in Africa for a number of months now. It's October 2021, and at some point over the summer we were told that the princess would be returning to Monaco this month, but we still don't know. Her story is kind of captivating everyone because there's so much unknown about it. Do we think Charlene will be back in Monaco this month after her extended stay in Africa?
Considering her return has been imminent since the summer, I'm not holding my breath.
It's one of those things we'll believe it when she lands in Monaco, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's just been one thing after another that she has had to stay in South Africa. She's been there since around April, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And she just a couple days ago, she gave another interview in South Africa, and she was talking about how she had her final, what we're told is her final surgery, and that she could not wait to get back to Monaco to see her kids, Jacques and Gabriella. But she never mentioned Albert.
What, those pictures
I
convince you, Brittany?
the one where it looked like a completely forced hug.
Yes.
Yeah, that one. No, definitely did not convince me in any way, shape, or fashion. Yeah, it's just it's interesting, and I think we have discussed in the past, Prince Albert going to People magazine, and saying, "Oh no, she didn't leave in a huff." Da da da. All of a sudden, they're protesting this and trying to make a point of no, she's coming back. And she said in August that she hoped to be back in October. I mean, it's October 16th as we are recording this. Still have not gotten any word that she's coming back or going back to Monaco. And granted, a lot of these rumors and stories could have been avoided in Monaco if the princely palace would just communicate with the press. They are absolutely horrible about communication. They do not let things be known. They basically just communicate with People magazine and Paris Match. And I've spoken to other royal reporters. This conversation has, been discussed before. They don't communicate, so that's how rumors get started. And so even if let's say it is true that she is planning on coming back, there is no marital issues. They were so far behind the game because the stories got out of hand before they ever even tried to stop them. I mean, they said nothing about when she first went to South Africa. No one even really knew she was going to South Africa. I mean, they don't keep the press updated. If you email them, you get no response. I mean, a lot of this would have been avoided if the princely palace had been open.
Because it was basically like royal watchers putting the story together, wasn't it? Like, she's still in South Africa months after what was supposed to be, what was it, a week or a couple of days with the rhinos, with the rhino charity, and then it just, it spitballed, and they did themselves no favors by not coming out of the gate, and they let it fester all summer, and now we don't even believe she's going to come back to Monaco at this point, or
I mean, they didn't even tell us from the initial moment that she was sick in South Africa. That came months and months later.
It was a good few weeks, wasn't it? Because she, like as you said, it's like, was it April she went? And that's the problem. It's also opaque because we know it was kind of springtime. We know that she went out there, but like you were saying, we've had to glue it all together from fragments. And by the middle of the summer, we had this kind of narrative, didn't we? Established that she'd gone out there, she'd experienced ENT problems while she was there because of a previous operation, and that's all being put right. But like you say, we don't really know very much more than that.
No.
Yeah. So, maybe the princely palace will learn something from this. Maybe not. But their determination to not discuss anything with the press, not respond to messages, has led them into this situation. You can't just communicate with People magazine and Paris Match and expect rumors not to get started. I mean, that may be a sad reality, but it's the reality.
Yes. And Charlene's social media is just, whenever I see a new post, it's just like, you're hiding something. And I hate that I think that, but they've given me no cause to assume anything else other than, why are you posting this? What are you trying to hide? What are you trying to sell us, kind of thing?
And of course, things have changed as the story's gone on, because when this first began, we've all lived through such extraordinary times, we kind of forget the timescale of it, don't we? If we go back to kind of April, May, there was still a lot of restriction within Europe about getting in and getting out. There were problems, you know, she was stranded in South Africa. She couldn't fly because if she goes above a certain altitude, it's going to damage her eardrums. It's also going to be extremely painful, cause further problems. And then people say, well, why doesn't she drive back through Africa? Why doesn't she get on a boat and sail? But of course, with coronavirus, with the pandemic, there were restrictions on that. We're now fortunately at this stage in a world where those restrictions are disappearing. Travel is a bit easier everywhere, and we hope that's the way it's going to continue. But she's still where she is. And as you said, we've kind of got to October when we were told she would be back, and we've got no communication about when it's going to happen. Or even if you turned around and said, do you know what, it's probably going to be another 6 weeks, she's really poorly, we've got to be careful.
Even that would be, even that news, if she needed to be there through November or whatever. It's better than all this speculation that we're doing, that the world is doing. And Albert can call up People magazine all he wants, but they bungled this.
Yeah, it has. It's been a really interesting story, because of course she was trapped in South Africa. Was she trapped? Is she choosing to stay? You know, all of that. She was in South Africa, unable to come back at the time of her 10th wedding anniversary, which of course caused all kinds of chat and chatter. And she's been apart from her kids for a long time. And we know she absolutely adores her children, and they adore her. And it must be extremely difficult for all of them. You know, all of this aside, she's not with her little boy and little girl, and they're not with their mummy. And that must be extremely hard for all of them.
For sure.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you know, I want to say they started a new school this year. You know, she wanted to be there to see him start school. Gabriella broke her leg at one point. I mean, we all know what it's like to be a little kid when you get hurt or you get sick. The first person you want is your mom.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I'm sure that broke Charlene's heart into a million little pieces that she couldn't be there. Because from all accounts that we can see on her posts, on videos, appearances, she is a very devoted mother. She loves and adores those kids. So I know that she's 100% telling us the truth and saying, you know, she cannot wait to get back to her kids. I'm sure she wishes they could have been down there with her in South Africa this entire time.
Yeah, absolutely. So we wait to see when she will return to Monaco. And of course, you'll find the latest news on that on royalcentral.co.uk. But we've had a kind of intriguing and unexpected story crop up amongst Europe's royals over the last few days. Princess Catharina Amalia of the Netherlands will be 18 in December, which is enough to make this person here feel very old, because I remember when Catharina Amalia was born. I don't just remember when she was born. I was working on a bulletins desk, and I can remember writing the copy to say that the future monarch of the Netherlands had been born and giving it to a newsreader to read out, and now she's about to become a grown-up. But all of that aside, as part of the celebrations planned for her coming of age, there's a book out, and in the book it was asked whether she could become queen were she to marry another woman. And such was the debate generated by this. The Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, I think that's how you say his name. Apologies if it's not. He put out a statement this week saying, yes, of course she can. Same-sex marriage has been legal in the Netherlands for 20 years. He said there would be no issue in a future monarch or heir marrying someone of the same sex. He was asked about whether that meant there would be issues around producing an heir, and he said, well, family law changes, so just take each situation as it comes. And that kind of, well, it led me to ask the question on the site, do all of Europe's monarchies need to do the same thing? I think they do. You know, most monarchies in Europe are in countries where same-sex marriage is on the statute books. It's legal for people to marry someone of the same gender. And it would seem really strange to me that the only person that wasn't allowed to do that would be the person in whose name's laws are enacted. That's my opinion.
I think if it's legal in the country, it should also be legal for them.
For sure. Yeah.
And it makes sense that the Netherlands is the first country to come out and say this, because they have always been very progressive, I guess. More, I don't know if more liberal is that way. I mean, Amsterdam. We all know the Netherlands is the Netherlands, so it's not surprising that they're the first to come up with that. I can see the Scandinavian countries probably being the next set to say that, because they're more the open-minded. The other countries, and now I don't know if same-sex marriage is allowed in Spain, because it's
It
such a
is.
strict.
No,
It is. Okay.
Same-sex marriage is legal in Spain, but as you say, you raise an interesting point, because it's to do with society's attitudes as well, isn't it? I mean, here in the UK, in England, the Church of England doesn't allow same-sex marriage, but you can have same-sex marriage under civil law, and the Church of Scotland allows it. But then the monarch here is the supreme head of the Church of England, so you kind of move into a different territory, don't you? Because you would expect the monarch or the heir to marry within the Church of England. If they wanted to marry someone of the same sex, they couldn't. They could marry under civil law at the moment. So can all of those strings be pulled together to make something sensible?
Right.
Would their spouse get a title if it was a civil marriage in the UK?
Yeah, they'd still be legally married. I mean, Charles and Camilla are married under civil law. They're not married in the Church of England. Their marriage is a civil marriage, which was blessed immediately afterwards. So I can't see that it would be an obstacle, though I would be intrigued to know what the title would be, because again, that's kind of why you think maybe some kind of announcements are needed from everybody, because actually, if a king marries another man, what title do you give his husband? If a queen marries another woman, what title do you give her wife? Would you have a situation where a queen regnant could be married to a queen consort, because that's the name that is given to a woman who marries a monarch, but a king consort couldn't happen because the title doesn't exist?
Right. Yeah. Things would definitely have to, all across the board, are going to have to be reevaluated for that. But based off religious views, title, I mean, there's a lot to delve into with that. But as you said, the Netherlands is the only country that has given the go ahead, and there's several monarchies throughout Europe. So until they do give the go ahead, they're not going to be. There's nothing going to be changing there. Now the UK only approved same-sex marriage not too long ago, correct?
2015.
Okay, so it was around the same time as the United States. So in my head, I would think the UK may be one of the later countries that would approve that, because the Netherlands had 20 years of it being legal, whereas the UK right now has had 6 years. So I don't see the UK going into making that type of a statement right now.
Well, it's only been 10 years that a daughter can not be displaced by the birth of any brothers. So
yeah, exactly.
Britain's got a way to go.
Yeah, and hey, there's countries in Europe that still, don't have that. I mean, look at Spain. Leonor could easily be ousted as Princess of Asturias if they were to have a son. I mean, Liechtenstein doesn't even allow females to be in the line of succession. So Monaco obviously doesn't allow women to reign over their brothers, even if they're older, because otherwise Gabriella would be the hereditary princess. So those things also need to change. There's several things that need to be.
Yeah. I would like the
altered.
title system to be kind of explored, and just even in general. Say George has a daughter. Would she be able to be Princess of Wales in her own right if she was the heir to the throne? That's something we need to explore. And it would be nice to live in a world where Beatrice could be Duchess of York in her own right when her father passes away, instead of that title going back to the crown, because he doesn't have a male heir. So I just think if we're looking at making it legal so that Catherine Amalia can marry a woman and have a queen, then we should look at titles across the board. Let's let women inherit titles in their own right. Let's let them inherit them from their fathers if there are no sons, or even if there are sons, if they're the oldest, let her inherit the title. or let a future female queen in the UK be the Princess of Wales in her own right. Let her be the Duchess of Cornwall in her own right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's an argument to be made as well. I mean, I get slightly anxious when people say, well, a queen regnant can't possibly have a husband who is a king because a king outranks a queen. And you kind of want to say, when did we revert to the Middle Ages? For me, the king is the name that you give to a man doing the job. Queen's the name that you give to a woman. So if a king can have a queen consort, why can't a queen regnant have a king consort? I don't think Crown Princess Victoria, when she takes the throne in Sweden, is going to be any less powerful if her husband is called King Daniel. We all know who is the monarch and who is the consort. So it just seems almost patronizing to say, well, a queen can't be married to a king because otherwise the king might be more important. Not in the 21st century, no. Maybe in medieval times, or early Tudor, when Mary Tudor was queen, and they were saying, oh well, her husband can't be called a king. Yeah, that's 600 years ago, and
things have changed in 600 years.
She had other issues too,
It didn't change in time for Heinrich, but it could change him.
I always thought Henrik had a point in Denmark. I mean, he's not asking to be in charge. It's just the title that goes with it. It just seems really patronizing to me to say a woman would lose all her power as queen regnant if you dare to call her husband king.
We can't even call Kate Duchess of Cambridge. We still call her Kate Middleton 10 years later. Are we really that concerned about king?
I know. That's it. And it's I suppose it's one of those issues that ends up being put on the back burner a bit, doesn't it? Because at the moment, all of the successions across Europe are secure. So here in the UK, we know that we've got 2 kings or 3 kings in line. So, talking about what you would call a female regnant's husband isn't really an issue anymore, and won't be for probably another 100 years. So I suppose that's the thing about royalty, isn't it? It's meant to be a long-lasting institution. And although we're talking about it now, it might be our grandchildren who find out the answer. Yeah, definitely. I hope that's made you two feel as old as me.
Well, when I started royal watching, all of these kids were toddlers, and now they're turning 16, 17, 18. So I'm feeling that college age as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge did not have children. They were not even married. They had just gotten engaged when I kind of started this whole thing. So,
And all of Crown Princess Victoria's little bridesmaids and the little boys, they were all just little toddlers, and now they're all teenagers.
I know. They are. I know. Little Christian in Denmark, who I remember as that funny looking little baby that cried all the way through his christening, 16 years old and about 9 feet taller than me.
And Leonore's in Wales all by herself.
I know. It is.
No, well, she's with Alexia, so technically she has.
Yeah, Princess College.
They become BFFs at their college.
I know. It all changes, doesn't it? It all goes round. It all goes round in circles. And no doubt we'll talk about this issue again in the future, because it's an ever evolving picture. And there's lots more about that, lots more about everything happening in the world of royalty on the site royalcentral.co.uk, and on our social media. You'll find us on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram, royal.central. And we will have another podcast for you very, very soon. Now we're back in the habit of it. But for now, we'll say thank you for listening and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.